Michael Owen and Steve McManaman join me to look ahead to all of this weekend's games and also to remember the life of the great Pelé, an extraordinary talent, an incredible footballer and someone who is synonymous with the game of football. How will you remember him?
Well, I'll remember him growing up, I suppose, and when I was such anybody that I could talk to about football, and you always want to know who's the best player. Anybody that I could talk to about football, and you always want to know who's the best player ever, who's the best, and everybody just said Pelé, so I just took it as that's what he was. I mean, then I had a little glimpse of Maradona coming to the end of his career. And of course, he was one of the greats as well. But I just assumed, I was told that Pelé was the man. And of course, in later life, getting to meet him once, looking at a few of his clips, looking at his record, his numbers, it all just comes together. And sadly, I didn't get to see him playing much myself. But all the things you hear is he was the greatest. And what I do know that he was a great man. When I met him, I was bowled over by his charm, by his smile, his personality. So football's lost a true great today.
You remember meeting him as well, don't you, Steve? What are your memories?
Like Michael said, a gentleman, very humble, considering of the player he was and the stature of the man. You know, 3 World Cups is something that you don't even think about now, do you? There wasn't a lot of clips of him when we were growing up because, of course, he played most of his football in South America and then the USA. But you could see clips of him winning the World Cup. So that's what you were focused on. And if you ever, got encapsulated by the gold shirts, the yellow shirts of the great Brazilian teams, he was the icon. He was the best. So when you saw Zico in the 80s or, R9, Ronaldo in the 2000s or the 90s, of the players they had, the best ever on a pedestal was Pelé. So you knew that he was something special. And it was, the 1970 World Cup stands out in my mind because it was the one in real glorious Technicolor. And that fantastic team. And again, he was the iconic number 10, the famous shirt. And it one that every Brazilian growing up wants to wear.
Yeah, football has lost a true icon, and the Premier League will continue to pay their respects to the man himself across all of the matches this weekend. We already saw that at the 2 games that were played tonight at the London Stadium at Anfield. And then tomorrow we have Wolves against Manchester United to look forward to, plus 4 3:00 kickoffs in the UK. Bournemouth against Crystal Palace, Southampton's trip to Fulham, Manchester City hosting Everton, Newcastle taking on Leeds before Brighton and Arsenal finish the day off before New Year's Eve celebrations. Then on New Year's Day, Tottenham take on Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest face Chelsea. But let's begin by taking a look back at tonight's action then. But bad news with Ivan Toney being stretchered off towards the end of the game, which we think may be a serious knee injury. And if we hear any more, we'll, of course, let you know. Let's start previewing what's coming up for the rest of the weekend then. At lunchtime tomorrow in the UK, Wolves host Manchester United. Let's hear from both managers, Julen Lopetegui and Erik.
For me, currently one of the best teams, undoubtedly, not only in England, because I think that they have improved a lot in this last month. This is my opinion. I have seen his match. I think that he's a very complete team without the ball, with the ball, individually, collectively. So we have to be ready to beat them, and we have, of course, the ambition and the illusion to overcome this big aim.
I'm not looking at other teams. I'm looking at our team, and I'm convinced of the squad we have, the players in our team, to compete with all those teams.
Well, Manchester United have returned from the World Cup break in brilliant form, winning back-to-back games in the Cup and in the League now. And actually, it doesn't seem like they're too far off pushing for a top 4 place. How do you assess their performances in the last 2 games?
Well, there was that much wrong, of course, with Manchester United over the last decade or so that it was never, ever going to get better overnight. Visible and evident now from Ten Hag's team. I was at Old Trafford for their win against Nottingham Forest last time out. They played OK, but controlled the game. And results are picking up, performances are picking up. Feels like the team has got a better atmosphere around it. Ten Hag is probably, shuffling his pack to get the squad that he wants. He's had 1 or 2 transfer windows now. He's got rid of 1 or 2 people that he might have thought were a problem. So it just feels like Manchester United are slowly clawing their way back to something like they want to be. Of course, still a long way to go.
They're obviously looking for a striker in the January window because although Marcus Rashford has been in brilliant form, he doesn't really play down the middle for Manchester United. How important is it that they do get some reinforcements up front?
I think it's important if it's the right player. I think that's the most important thing. And they might not be available now. Whether they can get someone in on loan, whether they can sign somebody, whether they've played in Europe before. There's a lot of permutations of what they do. Of course, they need reinforcements. They any help they can get. But tomorrow will be a really good game, actually. An early start at Wolves, the 12:30 kickoff. The first game for Julen Lopetegui. And it'll be a harder game than, Burnley at home, of course, and Nottingham Forest, because they didn't really put up much of a challenge. So a good test between the 2 managers.
Marcus Rashford, though, is having a brilliant season, isn't he? Seems to have got his mojo back. Where do you think that's come from?
Yeah, he looks happier on the pitch at the moment. Of course, he had a really good World Cup as well, and that inevitably gives you a lot of confidence. But as you say, Jules, I really see him as a left-sided attacking player. I mean, there's always been that debate whether he wants to play down the middle or on the left. In fact, we asked him the question in midweek and he says he prefers playing on the left. And I think he's a better player. He simply won't score enough goals to play down the middle. If you want a centre-forward for Manchester United and think of the strikers they've had over recent times, the Van Nistelrooys, I mean, total and utter goal machine. Rooney, total and utter goal. Van Persie, players like that, they do plenty of goals to the team, and that's absolutely what you need for a wide player. Do plenty of goals to the team, and that's absolutely what you need for a wide player. But to go down the centre, they need somebody that's going to be scoring big numbers, and I don't think Rashford will do that. So I think they really do need to get someone, as Maka says, the problem is getting somebody, that is the long-term solution. Now, is there a Wayne Rooney around that you can buy at, 18 or something, and that's it? You can nail your colours to the mast for 15 years. It's very hard to spot one. So what Manchester United have done as well in recent times, have bought older players for the here and now. I mentioned Van Persie, but they've done it with Ibrahimovic, they've done it with Larsson, they've done it with Van Persie himself. Yeah. They've done it with lots of players and just got 1 or 2 seasons out of them. I fear they might have to do that again, because I can't see any 18, 19, 20-year-old that's going to carry them, that's that good, that's available at the moment. So it's a real conundrum for them. I don't know where they're going to go with it. It might be that Martial is their answer for the short term, and they just have to sit and wait and be patient. But
particularly as well, because they spent a lot of money in the summer window, bringing in players like Casemiro. But how much of a difference has he made to Manchester United?
Well, he's been great, isn't he? There was a lot of eyebrows raised, actually, when he arrived. I don't know why, because if you've been watching La Liga and you've been watching any European football, you know that he's far better than what Manchester United have had already. And that's than the current set of players Manchester United have in that position. And the answer was a resounding yes. So it was a no-brainer to bring him in. Yes, his price tag might have been too much, or his wages, but you're talking about the richest club in the world, they can afford it. They need too much, or his wages. But you're talking about the richest club in the world, they can afford it. They need to improve, and they need to improve rapidly. So he's been an absolute superstar, and he will hopefully only improve when he, learns the language a bit more than...
You've pointed out it's Julen Lopetegui's first home game in charge of... You've pointed out it's Julen Lopetegui's first home game in charge of the club, and what a way to get your first win last time out. Winning in stoppage time, there must not be any better feeling as players.
No, absolutely. It was an astonishing goal, actually, the winner. And it was possibly, and it's all right saying in hindsight, but it was possibly a great game to play. If you're going to go away from home for your first game as a manager, then you probably want to go to Goodison at the moment, because confidence time for Everton to have so many players in attack when you're drawing the game, and they're queuing up at that back post to score a goal. But what a game. And they're queuing up at that back post to score a goal. But what a fantastic start to life in the Premier League for Lopetegui. Now, it's going to get a little bit harder, of course, Manchester United coming to town, but it's a great start for them.
And they moved off the bottom of the table with that win. What kind of differences are you expecting to see from Julen Lopetegui? Because from what we know of him from his previous clubs, he's actually quite a defensive manager, but that's not necessarily what Wolves need. They need to start scoring goals. Yes,
they need to climb away. I mean, beating one of their rivals in Everton the other day was a massive result, and the confidence that will bring. But we know the players that they have are good enough. Certainly they're good enough, because we've seen over the last couple of years, he just needs to get a little bit of belief in those type of players. He needs to get them driving forward. He needs the crowd behind them, and hopefully he can get the results. But it's going to be difficult because everybody's scrapping down there, but he's going to have to work his magic. He's certainly got the experience.
Do you think they need to buy another striker? I know everyone's in the market for a striker in January.
How many
Michael,
strikers do you think are out there?
Hey, Brighton need one. If there's one out there, come to Brighton, please. Because the thing is Raul Jimenez, we know that since his injury a couple of seasons ago, he's returned and not been scoring goals like he used to. And the other options that they've got up front haven't really been delivering. So do they need to buy someone in the window? Can they afford someone? Is Diego Costa enough?
Oh, it's hard to say. Nick Hwang's been whenever he comes off the bench, he looks sharp to the bench, but he had a good World Cup. As you say, Costa, another short-term sort of player. Does he score enough goals nowadays? Big-term sort of player. Does he score enough goals nowadays? Big question mark. Very difficult. It's the hardest, and I know I'm biased, but it's the hardest thing in the world to find is someone that's a consistent, scorer of goals. And everybody, you mentioned your team, Jules, we mentioned Manchester United. We've only mentioned 3 teams so far, and everyone needs a centre forward.
We were talking about Aston Villa needing a centre forward. Everybody needs someone who scores 25 goals a season, unfortunately. And there's just not that many out there. That's why Liverpool paid 80 million for Darwin Núñez last year. Everybody said it was too much money, and it may well have been. But to get a youngster in and hope that you can improve him, that's half the battle nowadays. Yeah. Newcastle bought Isaac for 60. That's how much they cost. And it still doesn't mean that they're a surefire hit.